Welcome to Money on Tap. Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals' experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. That's what we do on this show. We look at all sides of the issues, and we bring a fully independent planning perspective to the table.
It's Money on Tap's insightful Summer Sector Series, diving into the hottest investing sectors for the season. Each week exploring a different high-growth industry, analyzing major players, market trends, and emerging opportunities, with expert guidance to make smart investments all summer long. This week on Money on Tap, the American story. Take a ride with us in the industrial sector. Your summer school session starts now.
Welcome back. You are listening to Money on Tap. My name is Seth Crustman, and I am here with Ben Brayshaw and Dan Micklin. I bet you guys didn't see that one coming. It's a beautiful day here. We hope that you are looking forward to joining us here at Money on Tap. You can reach out to us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. For starters, thank you for subscribing to Money on Tap, and that's podcast world, or if you're listening to us on the radio, just for not turning the dial for the next hour as you dive into some really, really awesome conversation about how to, improve and become more successful in your investing. And we have got a heck of a show here for you guys to onboard with us. If you're new, welcome. We just love to invite you to go back, have a listen to all of them, all of the 350 episodes of Money on Tap, so that you feel like you really are caught up on everything that you need to know to be a successful investor. It's just a small ask there for you guys.
Well, don't take our advice from 8 years ago to invest today, though.
Oh, yeah, if we could only rewind and be like, how did we apply all of those tasty bits, and where are we at now? How do we apply it now, and stay ahead of it, you guys?
Yeah, thanks, Seth. Dan, how you doing today?
I'm doing really good.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm. This show should be really interesting. I think it's kind of heavy.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It's heavy. It's heavy. I'm excited about getting into the industrial sector. Hence my pun on weight. But this should really take off. I think it's going to be good.
Another pun there.
Oh,
another pun
there.
there.
You caught it, Dan. You caught it. Bad dad jokes today.
We could do a whole show on those easily.
I think the thing about the industrial sector that just really pushes the envelope. I mean, I'm sure a lot of our listeners like the industrial sector, this is boring. It's okay. This is not going to be, this is grandpa's investment a little bit. And I don't mind saying that. There is a lot of weight to the conversation, and, pun again there, Dan.
You only get one pun on weight a show.
Well, okay, sorry. I said heavy. I didn't say weight. So,
okay, all right. Just making sure.
But I really think that the industrial sector has some really unique aspects to it, and I think from a standpoint of actual returns, if you compare the S&P 500, to the Russell 1000, to the various ETFs, you go back 25 years, the industrial sector alone has outperformed everything.
It's incredible.
It's really incredible. I mean, it's like you could have put your money there and said, who cares about the S&P 500? You'd have more money today. It's one of these sectors that I think is, again, snoring boring, but it really is what moves our country. And that's fourth pun, Dan.
You're on fire.
I am on fire. So, I think there's a lot to this, and I think it's worthy of listening, just because if you're like an S&P 500 investor, this might absolutely change your mind. I mean, the industrial sector in the last 25 years has done roughly 542%. The next best performing is basically the Dow Jones at 535%. Okay, and then you get down to just comparing it to the IVV or the SPY, ETFs. I mean, they're like 496, 493%. I mean, you're talking 30, 40% compounded interest gain over 25 years. I mean, that's a remarkable. That's more than 10% difference.
It's incredible.
It's really incredible.
Shoot, that's it. That's a wrap. Okay, you guys. Had a lot of fun recording that with you today. We are in the American story, okay? And we're inviting you to take a ride with us on the industrial sector today as we are in our summer sector series, dicing it up, chopping it up. Those are no puns in any way, shape, or form on this sector of the S&P 500. So I will go the total opposite of Ben with all of that this morning. But
just keep building it up, Seth. Building it up.
I am going to get on board with you today, though. I'm going to get on board with you in a big way and love that we get an opportunity to bring this sector to life. It is, like you said, it could be kind of that sleeper that people just don't pay attention to and are like, hey, wait a second. That's some pretty hot stuff there if we're really paying attention and understanding the why of it. And that's what we're going to do here with you today. So you guys, welcome aboard to the American story and taking a ride with us in the industrial sector today. With that, it's that time for Money in the News.
Up first today, here's what investors are saying about Biden dropping out and what it means for your 401k. This is from Money Watch, Amy Pinchy. Thank you for that. And we can't talk news these days without talking about, obviously, the earth-shattering announcement here that Joe Biden is dropping out of the presidential election. That brings up lots of thoughts and feelings and emotions and concern and
parties.
Just parties as well. There's lots of stuff going on with this announcement. And it is clearly dominating the news, not only from a just general nightly news perspective, but in the financial world as well. And so looking forward from here, and as the article points out, what does it mean for your 401k? What does it mean for investments in general? Initially, after the news came out, the market barely fluctuated with that. Both the S&P and the NASDAQ, everything was up on the Monday following the announcement, and we've had a little turbulence since, but for sure it's introduced a level of uncertainty into our economic outlook and anybody who's making bets around forward-looking policy, primarily because we don't know what Kamala Harris thinks about any of this stuff necessarily, where she stands on a number of issues. But there's been a couple of hints in her past kind of following through as expected she might on Biden's economic policies. There's a couple of things. She definitely leans green. It's a supporter in the EV space and has had, kind of anti-energy and anti-trade perspectives over some time as well. So in likelihood, these are the kind of things we can expect to hear from her as she defines her platform going forward and how all that affects the polls and where she stands, compared to Trump. Looking forward at the election in November anyway. Prior to the announcement, Trump was holding a large lead, leading people into this trend that's been spoken about here in the investment world called the Trump trade, which was people kind of forecasting, his win in November and investing in line with where they think his policies might line up.
I think it's interesting that Trump trade and the conversation around energy. I think Trump, he promised to, in his first day of office, to end the mandate of the EV, change in cars. I thought that was really interesting. So it really does have a massive impact in that space. So if you're, the automakers have felt a large hit financially, according to this, article statement from the EV development, and that's been complicated. But it is interesting. I mean, the article does touch on, Trump's relationship with Musk, and how that will impact Tesla. I thought that was an interesting perspective. And, overall, I watch some of the insider trading, some of, where congressmen, senators are trading and so forth. And, the energy space is a place that a lot of people have been going in that world, and I think, I don't know if that's a Trump expected election kind of scenario, and that happened before this Biden dropout. I also don't know, if some people listen to our utilities, show and the conversation around the demand of AI and the ultimate, the green energy initiative can't touch nearly the demand growth of energy. It's out of control. And so I'm just really curious how that, like which one is really pushing it, or are both pushing it forward, or it's interesting. I mean, I still think the Kamala Harris, Dan and I, we were talking about it before the show. I think, hey, listen, the American people didn't really get to pick a Democratic nominee. I mean, this is really kind of a sad day for having an opinion. They completely skipped the
whole primary process.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that's. I mean, no matter which side of the aisle you sit on, I mean, I think we want the majority of both sides to pick their person and us vote as a country. I mean, that's the good, bad, or indifferent. No matter where you think, I really feel like that's missed in this conversation. So this does impact, because I really don't know. I mean, the article's telling us what Kamala's interests are and some of that. I really don't know. I mean, how much political background knowledge do you really have? Where does she really stand? Where's her voting record in that space? I mean, there's a lot of kind of moving pieces there. I agree with the green energy piece, but what global initiatives are we looking at? That's some of my concerns, and I think that's a big miss. So, kind of, if Kamala ran and won, I'm not sure I would 100% know where to. Like, it's a little bit more apparent, I guess, when you go through the whole primary process and where people stand and the kind of agreements that these guys make to get where they're at.
There was the kind of heir apparents in the room of where money flows make the most sense with, a Trump candidacy, and, if elected, what that could mean, with the banks, right? Kind of some of the loosening and some of the restrictions, the energy trade being in there really made a lot of sense. It was kind of no-brainers. One of them that I was a little not certain about was the private prisons. It had quite a bit of a tailwind now with kind of Trump being the leader of the delegate for the Republican Party. So that was one where I was like, well, that's a 50-50, because Kamala Harris too. I mean, her history in California was loaded the prisons up with more stringent policies on marijuana, and one of the big things that I've heard about her, getting stricter on the border policies, that would be one of the big pushes into that private prison trade there. What else was there inside of that? Oh, the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency stocks, getting some bump there with the Trump crew in there, and I just was a little surprised on that. That was actually one where I was like, I don't want the one world currency thing to really take over. That's where I'm like, I don't want that piece of the pie to be a part of the story moving forward. I get a little bit fearful around that kind of stuff when it comes to the economics of it all, and I don't know that that's necessarily where that would go in a Trump presidency. But what was the last one here was the Fannie and Freddie Mac. That was an interesting one as well, where the year to date it's up more than 60%. Getting Fannie and Freddie out of the conservatorship was something that was a really big push, and that was likely a Republican kind of a trade. And with that, I felt like it was important probably for us to say, knowing where we've been and being where we are gives us what the future holds inside of who you are and being all that we have been. That's my favorite Kamala Harris quote for you today.
That sounds very much familiar in listening to her speak. So great job there.
I don't know if that was true or not, but that was my best attempt to try to sum up.
I do think, one piece about the energy space I think is interesting, and I've been curious because, Trump's like, drill, baby, drill. That was a quote, close the borders. We need to do these things. I get that. Like, there's probably no, whether you're pro-oil or not pro-oil, like, you're not going to have power if we don't get more power online because of the demand of the world. You look at the energy companies, and they've made so much money during the Biden administration because, closing the doors on oil has made it more scarce, more difficult, right? Which raises the prices, which means they sell it for more. And it's still sitting in storage in the ground. They still own the oil, So they're, so creating a scarcity only raises. And when, Ukrainian war and shutting down Russia and all this stuff, I mean, it's really made oil companies a ton of money. So it's interesting, if we drill, baby, drill, is the price of gas going to go down, which means these companies make less money, their profits are lower, right? And they're expending their resources. I'm just curious. I mean, it could go the other way too.
Well, I mean, you kind of wonder where energy companies really stand. They want the expanded rights to drill into national
right,
parks.
They want access to the resource.
They want access, but they don't want to necessarily put that drill in the ground.
Yeah. Well, no, they want to drill it so it's drilled, but they don't really want to give it to you. They want to wait till it's $400 a barrel.
All right. Thank you, Yasmin Karam. Fantastic article here on Meta's reality check inside the 45 billion cash burn at Reality Labs. Anyone really kind of unfamiliar with the story here of what has transformed for Facebook, now Meta, is this Reality Labs division of the whole really mastermind that has really been the Zuckerberg story of late. And it is just, well, for one, it's the vision that he has of really creating this online metaverse where you just have these VRs or these optics that create this whole world that you're a part of now inside of the metaverse and working inside of it, entertaining inside of it, you name it, all basically life being transformed inside and going into this metaversion or metaverse version of life. And the dollars that have been pushed into this project and the challenges that have been really kind of derailing this whole project as a whole. You've really got a lot of attrition from people that have been brought in to make this go inside of the project and then finding out, okay, this is not going or working or not able to hit the targets that have been set out there for whatever the reasons are. They get into some of the past employees having a conversation around this with Yasmin on, why things aren't going as well. There seems to be a lot of conflict that there's an expectation of what this could be or should be, and then there's a reality of them not being able to hit that, or them coming from, being really amazing at WhatsApp or really amazing leadership in Instagram and not being able to translate that into this Reality Labs division. And then 6 months, 8 months down the road, they either leave or get the boot. So there was a ton of information in here really around, what it is and what the challenges have been. And at the same time, there's just kind of an unknown of what the path, like, is this actually going to be something that buries Mark and his vision and just doesn't actually get pulled off? Or will they be able to pull it out? And is this now going to be the next leg of Meta?
Yeah, it's been an incredible cash spend, and it really is Zuckerberg's vision, and he's been right in the past. So there's, I guess, some reason to have faith. However, the 10 years into this venture, right, and some of the analysts in reviewing the likelihood of metaverse being a hit say it's at least 10 years out. So we're talking about a 20-year potentially time cycle from the initial investment to being able to be profitable in this thing, which for a shareholder that's a significant commitment, a significant amount of time. And highlighted by a simple fact in the article here, it notes that in last year these VR devices, the headsets, the Oculus, the things that are required in order to engage this metaverse, industry-wide, so not even speaking to the Meta product itself, they sold about $1 billion worth of this equipment, this hardware last year.
They spent $16 billion.
Yeah, Reality Labs is looking for the name Reality. Yeah. They spent $16 billion alone, just themselves. So, I mean, where's the relationship from the expense to the actual market potential? It seems crazy.
The only thing I took away from this article, I know we don't have much time, but I took away from the fact that Zuckerberg could turn off the volume of spending here as a as a backstop to financial loss and protecting the stock market value and the growth that we've seen in Meta. So I think he's going to spend as long as he wants to. He's got some sort of dream. I mean, our world is built around relationships. If the VR space can build a relationship-based thing where you go home from work and you pop on your VR Oculus, and I mean, I don't even. I mean, I've never want to wear one of those things. I just don't have any interest in being, in some virtual world. But everyone's looking for a relationship. But when you watch these movies, they all have relationships in this meta space. I think we're at least 10 years off before there's any sort of generational, kind of catch that everyone wants to be in that space. And then, then your question is what kind of life are you living? So,
right.
No, that's another issue.
Well, it's not this life. It's the Meta life. That's the one you're living, Ben. And
I will not be living a Meta life.
I will say, we got to go. But I will say, in just thinking through what would this be like, right now, you and I, we'd all be in our little Oculuses or goggles, right? And we would be doing this show together. It would look like I'm in the studio with you right now instead of, the version that we're running with today, which I would be like, hey, that's some cool stuff. That's kind of fun.
I'm good with the way we're at. I mean, you not being here, that's fantastic. I mean, it works really well.
Maybe we could track down Warren Buffett's meta in there and get him on the show.
We're gonna stop. We're gonna stop there. And when we come back, we're going to be getting into the American story as you take a ride with us on the industrial sector of the S&P 500. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. And thank you for subscribing. When you subscribe, please drop us a line there. Let us know, because we want to send you out some Money on Tap gear. And just appreciate you for being a part of our community and doing what we're doing here and being successful in your investing. That's it. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, Dan Mickelon here with Brayshaw Financial. Looking for a hassle-free way to invest? Look no further than Brayshaw Financial Group. With Brayshaw Financial Group, you can start investing with as little as $100, enjoy a user-friendly platform with a diverse range of investment options. Visit Brayshaw Financial Group and start your investment journey today. Brayshaw Financial Group, investing made easy.
Thank you for joining us for Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more of this week's show with Ben, Seth, and Dan.
Welcome back. You are listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We're in the American story. Yes, you, I, everyone, we're in it. And part of that story is the sector of industrials. And it's one that is a much larger story than at this moment most people care to kind of admit or consider. And it's one that really brings us into kind of a heart of investing. Really, if we take a look at the history here, it is at the heart of investing. It's the heart of why we have this show today on investing with you. And it's we're getting close to wrapping up this summer sector series with you. And it's one that we've kind of just held back on to get you so much more information and, the makeup of the S&P 500 before really kind of getting into this sector of industrials. And what is it? Let's get there first.
Yeah, this, as I was digging into this, I realized that, and I think that's where we drove the title off of, the industrial sector was the birthplace of America's might, kind of post-war, coming out of World War II, our ability to manufacture, American steel, U.S. Steel, the railroad companies, these are the things that kind of launched us as an economy into the world we're in now, where it's essentially been taken over by technology and consumer spending is really where our economy is at these days. But it really was the industrials that set us on this course to American might. And it is these companies. I mean, if we're talking about, these are the companies that build things, move things, the companies that defend us, build all the equipment that we need to maintain our standing in the world, and all of the kind of the underpinning, the infrastructure for getting our economy moving coast to coast and around the world. It's made up of a number of different kind of subsectors inside the industrial sector itself. And just to rattle off a few, we're talking about aerospace and defense, right? So obviously a major player in the technology world, the manufacturing world, the holder of vast government contracts. They supply all of the materials necessary for exploration into space, the American military and our projecting might around the world. The airline industry. So that's not just commercial, but it's commercial and freight, right? So all of the airline carriers fall into the industrial section. Construction and engineering. The companies that build the buildings we all work in and help us lay out and design the cities we all live in. The machine industry, producing all that heavy equipment necessary to produce these goods. The marine industry, it's shipping around the world and the building of these massive shipping container boats. The road and rail industry, the transportation infrastructure industry. So when you think about these kind of components, these really are the the devices we use to move the rest of our economy. And that's, talking about the industrial sector as the American story and, opening it up with, take a ride on that with us, take a ride on the industrials with us. I mean, if we're building it, we're moving it, and we're using it to defend ourselves, it's coming out of this industrial sector.
There's a lot to the industrial sector, and I think you can either get a tremendous rate of return. We talked about the 500 and almost 50% rate of return in the last 20 years compared to like the 490 in the SPY or the S&P ETF sectors, investment options. I think the thing that people don't understand is that industry is really the underpinnings of the majority of our world, right? That is the space where, the buildings we walk in, the planes we get on, the railroad cars that move freight. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been stuck behind, a railroad track crossing and seen hundreds upon hundreds of cars, and you're sitting there for 20 or 30 minutes. I mean, it could be an hour. So, I mean, it's really crazy how long these, when we talk about the transportation industry and we look at all the semi-tractor trailers just moving stuff constantly in our country, and there's just so much to this sector. And I think you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. And I was thinking about some of the returns because, you can get as granular as just like buying the Arc space exploration, and, in the last 3 years, you'd be down over 8.5%. I mean, that'd be horrible, right? But then you can go right into there was one here that was pretty phenomenal. I was like, so you get down 8%, or you could be, small cap industrials is up 15. The Dorsey Wright Industrial Momentum for the last 5 years is up 6.5 almost. And you start going through this, but then the industrial sector Spider ETF, the XLI, it's up 12% for a 5-year average. To think that this sector alone, over a massive, whether it's short or long term, really kills the S&P 500 over and over again in a lot of different. Now, it's not every time, but when you look at different time sectors and so forth, the industrial sectors is powerful. No pun intended. It is powerful. It really does drive our economy. It drives our investments. There's just so much opportunity to it, and it's what is it? It's 8.6 8.6% of the entire S&P 500 allocations right now, and it's not the biggest. I mean, remember the tech sector is like a quarter of the S&P. I just think there's so much to this space, and the the movement of tech, and we're going to talk about AI, and how that plays into it really has an opportunity for further continued growth. But historically, this is the place to be.
Yeah, you're not going to build without it, right?
You're not going to grow without it.
You're not going to grow without it. You're not going to build, i.e., building growth, right? Correlation there, 100%. You're not going to move without it because we've got that transportation inside of it as well. And when we kind of get into like, is this an exciting investment part for us? Not typically. I mean, if you were to take a look at even just like your kind of your real estate that's involved around this as well, it's not the skyscraper, right? It's just not that. It's not that big, beautiful building that most people want to go ahead and say, wow, that is success. No, it is the one that you are driving through in the shipyards and the cranes, and it's dirty. It is dirty, and it's all the things around that are so critical. And I would just say it's an overlooked part of what we have the ability to really take a look at. And inside of that, what is it? What do we got when we're getting inside of this sector? Well, let's see. We go into just a couple of different tickers, right? That's when we say tickers. If you're joining us for the first time today, we forget because we've been doing this for a little bit together, and we always want to kind of back it up a little bit and say, let's get on board, right? Ticker. That's basically when you want to go invest and you're like, hey, I really want to put some money in an idea and be a part of that. Well, you're gonna you're going to want to go ahead and put it inside of some kind of a call sign, ticker, on whether it's the company of GE. Hey, look at that, GE. It is actually one of the number one percentage-wise companies that's inside of the ticker XLI, which is the XLI is the ETF that represents the industrial sector by Spider company, fund company that, puts this package of this ETF together for us. So, there we go. We can get into more of that down the road. But inside of this, it's really the XLI is a ticker that kind of warehouses or showcases and gives us a representation of the industrial sector. And inside of that, it's broken up into several companies, right? There's but the top 10 holdings that we can kind of get an idea of what's really going on inside of this sector are going to be GE, Caterpillar, Uber, Honeywell, Union Pacific Corporation, that's the railroads there, RTX, Eaton Corporation, Boeing, United Parcel Service, and Lockheed Martin. So all of those can, not all of them, but there's a few of them that can even kind of get stripped out and pulled into what we call a subsector, the sector inside of this sector. And when we're taking a look at that performance piece that Ben, you're talking about, the one of the things that was really interesting was how this sector of the S&P 500 has really been an over performer. And why? And so what is it? Why? Why is it an overperformer is one of the questions we would ask. And through periods of time, overall, we're talking about a very large period of time where it has outperformed the S&P 500. And so, but with that, why is it that we're just not really I would say most of us just aren't all up to speed. We're not sitting here talking about several of these companies and understanding that is a part of that growth story. That is a part of that American story, and that's a part of our investing in what we do here when we're talking about sectors and power of some of these sectors and the power of getting those pieces inside of our portfolio in a way that accomplishes some different things for us.
Yeah, I think the sector it's made up of so many parts that don't seem to be necessarily related, or maybe that's not the wrong term, but they might not perform in unison at the same times. You have the defense sector, which is the leading component of this, which has some cyclical components to it, but it's largely secured by huge long-term government contracts, right? And America is always going to spend on defense, but America and our defense budget is just a piece of that. These defense companies, sell weaponry and technology to countries all around the world. So, it's an unfortunate fact that conflict seems to never end. But as long as that's ongoing, these companies will be producing weapons and shipping them out and selling them at a profit, and will kind of always buoy this part of this element of the sector itself. We're always going to travel. Things are good, things can be bad. Airlines are a tricky investment for sure. But, in some form or fashion, whether it's, commercial for business or moving freight, these planes will keep flying. However, on the flip side of that, they're super sensitive. Yeah, we hope. And they're, airlines are super sensitive to the price of oil and producing that jet fuel, so that always keeps their profit margins tight, although it's a critical piece of our national infrastructure is to be able to move things through the air. And then, the tried and true railroad, less cyclical, less costly, moves just as much goods as anything else across our country, but certainly isn't that super exciting investment opportunity. People think of, railroads, that's kind of old school, but it is certainly something that's not going away anytime soon.
Dan, I think, a lot of our listeners are, and myself included, this is so complex, right? I mean, that's one thing about the industrial sector. I think as an industrial investor myself, I really do like the generic approach to the space because it does do so well historically. But I think when you talk about airlines and you start looking at, as some of the information and research, the International Air Transport Association, the IATA, expects around $25.7 billion of net profits $25 billion of net profits in 2024, with a net profit margin increase of 2.7%. That's an increase of 2.7% from 2023 to 2024. That's an expected number of travelers of 4.7 billion people this year, which would be higher than pre-pandemic highs of 4.5 billion, as in boy, people traveling in 2019. That being said, you turn yourself over to the JETS ETF and you say, wow, year to date, that thing's up 0.25%. It's down negative 9.11% year average over 5 years. That is like, no one wants that in their portfolio, right? Like, you don't, like, you know, there's times where that thing swung, we've owned it in and out and done pretty well with it at times, you know, but then you turn over and you look at the Shield Global X Defense Tech ETF, and guess where that's at? 24.46% year to date. I mean, that almost 25% difference in performance makes it really complicated to subsector invest. And like as you said, Seth, you know, these kind of subsectors of the industrial. Do you go into defense? Do you go into defense tech? You know, or do you just buy the sector? And I think the complexity of this space is really because you start looking at everything. They're all 9s and 10s and 17 and 1.75 and you know, and I'm looking at small cap at 13. You know, like this is all year to date numbers, and the variable is just massive. I mean, I don't see the variable as much in the subsector sets as we've talked about with the other sectors, right? I mean, I think that's the complexity we're trying to communicate to our audience today. And if you are looking to invest in the industrial space, I mean, I think as a generic investor, you know, kind of go general. You know, I mean, my advice would be go general. If you're saying, hey, this is the sector I want to be in, I'm going to buy industrial, I'd go general. Figuring out which one's going to be the hitter, or you know, is Jets far down enough that maybe it's time to ride that one. You know, no pun intended. Honestly, ride that one. You know, to somewhere north of here. That might be your choice, but be prepared. That thing has been a massive underperformer against everything else out there. Meanwhile, the general index is killing the S&P historically. I mean, there are very few sectors that I would say, hey, listen, this thing really has all the historicals you'd want to have exposure to. It's not part of our current, you know, top sector listing. I think it's like, you know, the 7th or 8th investment sector list on our current sector, you know, scaling system. So I'm not saying, hey, this is a buy today, but this is a sector that exposure is really important long term.
You guys, you're listening to Money on Tap, and you can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. And we're going to take a quick break. And while we're taking a break, first of all, I want to thank you for subscribing. And when you do that, please hit us up at either one of those. Give us a call, get us an email. It's just one of the things that we love, that you can support us, whether you're a client or not. You can support what we're doing here at Money on Tap. And share that. Share it with a friend. Share it with the people that you care about. And go back and listen to some of the other shows that we've had. And if you can, subscribe and just help us out and let us know. Because, yeah, we want to send you out some Money on Tap gear. And that's a lot of fun for us here. We are going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of the American story. So take a ride with us on the industrial sector. Hey guys, Seth Cressman with Brayshaw Financial Group. Are you ready to take control of your financial future? Look no further than Brayshaw Financial Group. Our team of experienced advisors is dedicated to helping beginners like you build wealth through smart investing strategies. Visit BrayshawFinancial.com today and start your journey towards financial independence. Brayshaw Financial Group, your partner in wealth creation.
We appreciate you listening to Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan. You can contact us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more of this week's program.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We are deep into the American story as you take a ride with us on the industrial sector of the S&P 500. We have got a lot to cover still. We were really inside of this subsector story, really inside of the airline story. And I think that was one that we wanted to spend a little bit more time with you and talk about.
Yeah, the airlines have always been a tricky play. And, there's a couple of things that kind of work for and work against them. And we touched on that before. I mean, the primary driver in their success has always been the simple fact that people are going to travel one way or another, between business flights, moving of freight, and just vacation-like travel. There's always something going on, although it is very cyclical and very, driven by, how well our economy is doing. There's a baseline component that are going to keep these planes in the air no matter what. And there's a couple of key metrics that people look to when they're trying to measure, or forecast what an airline is going to do performance-wise. And they are ASM, which is available seat miles, and revenue per available seat mile, which is RASM. And those are things that you can find, published about any airline. And they're pretty technical metrics, but what they're looking at is, how many seats is an airline filling and over how many miles are they flying them? And then how efficient are they in driving profit out of that number? That's the RASM metric, and that's probably the more important because it takes into account not only how far they fly, how many people they're flying, but how efficiently they get these people up and off the ground. So if you are interested in diving into airlines, I'd suggest you take a look at those as kind of key metrics as to pick which airline. And then the other play, of course, is just to go with an ETF like Jets and buy the whole industry in one shot.
I think the airline industry is an area with so many different problems, including pilots. And that's been a big conversation, and I know we're going to dive into AI, but I think it's really interesting. The pilot issue is enormous. Like, it's just like, you see these pilots running from plane to plane sometimes. It's pretty crazy, and they're talking about, literally flying planes and landing planes through AI, no pilots, just for like cargo planes. There's nobody on the plane at all. They're just launching these things. It sounds crazy, but we do it with drones all the time.
Do it all the time. Yeah.
All the time. It's not a big deal. And now they're talking about just going down to, one pilot per plane with no co-pilot and AI. So AI would fly the plane. There would be a human being that could remedy this. And there's probably going to be just thinking about all the different licenses, it'd be like, well, I'm licensed to be only a landing plane emergency pilot. I don't actually fly planes. There'll probably be some just to get people in the cockpit because they really don't need them. So this is really interesting where AI is going, and something could make air travel significantly easier. The problem is not the number of planes on the ground. The orders at Boeing are not launched through the roof here. It's really about having pilots. And if they can have more people to fly or more planes that can launch and take off and land and so forth, air travel is going to become easier, quicker. The whole thing's going to be significantly better long term. So I do actually have some optimism about the airline industry, though I don't, until they get it figured out, I'm not.
Well, I, for one, am really looking forward to getting the call where they're like, "Hey, Seth, we need you. Come on up. Let's go get this."
Dan and I will not be on that plane.
Parachutes for everybody.
I think
everyone gets one carry-on: your backpack or your parachute.
I think this is one of the things where I think we're going to see this in our lifetime. Okay. I think we're going to get to the place where it's like people are like, wait, what? There's actually a person flying this plane? Oh, shoot. I'm not getting on that airline because it's going to I think it's going to transition. People are going to go from feeling confidence in the person flying that plane to, like where we're at, we don't trust the computers to fly the plane, to the opposite, where people are like, I really don't think I trust this person to bring this thing down safely. That, I think, is going to be one of the biggest challenges or one of the biggest transitions that we start to see here inside of that industry. And it's not that far away, believe it or not. I really think it's probably 10 years down the road, which is not that far away. With that, we got to take a quick break, you guys. You're listening to Money on Tap and the American Story, where you take a ride with us on the industrial sector of the S&P 500 in our Summer Sector series. When we come back, we're going to land the plane with you. Ooh.
Another one.
AI, baby. AI. Cannot wait to get into this with you. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for personalized guidance to kickstart your investing journey? Look no further. Brayshaw Financial Group and our planners are here to help. Our team of experts will provide personalized advice tailored to your financial goals. Visit BrayshawFinancial.com today to schedule your free consultation. Brayshaw Financial, investing made easy.
You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. And we are in the American story as you take a ride with us on the industrial sector. And a lot of fun that we've been able to just get into this sector with you guys and, and talk about so many different parts and pieces. We're going to get into AI and really what the transition inside of that world and the effect that world is having inside of this industrials. But before we go there, as said before, in order to know where you've been, you got to know where you are so that you can be going where you want to be and not where you've been. That's my second attempt there at getting some Harris into you. We're gonna go into a little bit of the history. All that to say, we're gonna get into the Dow Jones Industrial Average because guess what? That is the American story when we talk about investing, and we've done shows on this, and it's a fascinating part of our history. But what has transformed inside of that? What has happened? Because that was the industrial average, right? You want to take a look back not that long ago. I mean, it was, 20 years ago? Let's pop into their lovely little time machine here and go back. Well, 80s is more than 20 years ago. Can't believe that. But, let's go back to 2003, right? And you're going to see things like 3M still there. AT&T, Boeing, Caterpillar, Coca-Cola, Exxon, General Electric, General Motors, Hewlett-Packard, Home Depot, Intel, Johnson & Johnson. You're gonna see really a transition during this time. Just 20 years ago, of really that story of the Dow Jones being an industrial average to something else, more of consumer staples, more of technology, more of energy. There's a transition. Walt Disney's in there too, Walmart. There's a transition that's really happened, and it's been right in front of us. It's been right before our eyes that we've seen the bellwether of investing here in the Dow Jones really transition, and just a cool thing for us to be a part of.
Yeah, even I think about the fact that we've had this kind of morphing, Dow. Like when you think about the Dow from the 30s or 40s, like you think about the industrial, the steel, the rails, the rail cars and trains and all of that. But you don't have that perspective when you think of Amazon. They are probably the closest to the rail car sitting on the Dow as I can think of. And so, they're just moving stuff constantly. So, I think there's a real component change that's happened, but that really hasn't impacted. It has not impacted the performance of, usually the top 30, these 30, stocks of the Dow or whatever, not top, but the 30 stocks of the Dow, they are not, people talk about the Dow, oh, the Dow was up, the Dow was down, and you have this emotional feeling about it, and we don't really care. I don't really care what the Dow does, but when you look at XLI and you look at the historical performance of the industrial sector, and you still say it's outperforming like the S&P 500 and the Dow by major margins. It's pretty phenomenal. I honestly think this is probably a better comparative. I mean, if this was your benchmark against every investment you'd have, you'd be like, yeah, I don't want to own that. I want to own this. And it's pretty scary when you think about the impact overall. And now with AI, the growth here is, profitable growth is pretty significant.
I think AI is one of its best, most investable future applications is going to come in manufacturing.
Yeah.
Right? The ability to produce goods, the ability to, maintain supply lines, make sure the right shipments hit the factory on the right day, and a deliverable to the line, which will be fully automated and, essentially never make mistakes and just roll product 24/7. I think that's one of the major investment opportunities is in the manufacturing sector, which is industrial, where I think AI is going to come in and change the world. But, in the airline space, we talked already about the co-pilot issue. There's going to be a lot of other things, driven by AI, including, fuel efficiency, preventative maintenance. And we talked about this in the last sector conversation as well. Speaking about utilities, that they're going to use AI to predict where the breakdowns happen, what maintenance needs to be done. It's not going to require, eyes on the wings. It's going to be driven by, hey, AI tells us it's time to go change this part. So I think all of these things lead into major enhancements in profit for these companies down the road.
Big time profit margin changes.
I just think about the fuel efficiency, right? From one place to another. What's the best? I mean, we've been doing things a certain way because that system has worked for however long it's worked, right? And there's good reason for that. But when you can bring in some different factors to really impact that bottom line in transportation for us, which all will continue to run through fuel, whether you like to think so or not, folks, it's gonna be that way for a long time.
I mean, Seth, as we talk about manufacturing, I mean, it's just like we haven't even really touched on the concept of the defense developments that with AI. That's a whole nother. I mean, we could do 5 shows on that.
Let's do that.
But I mean, AI and the predictive needs of defense, and how to fight other defenses, and they're just the innovation it's driving is phenomenal. I mean, reading some of these articles about what these companies are allowing us to hear, really is crazy what AI is doing in the defense sector, and it's pretty scary. I mean, I don't want to be fighting AI. I mean, but I'm also not in the Terminator movie yet. But but it's coming. I mean, this is what our military is getting ready to face, and this concerns me because I think about the technological advances that China has over us in a lot of ways, and this is why chip manufacturing is needed to be brought back to the United States, and that's one of the reasons our Congress actually figured out how to pass that bill, and it's probably not enough.
You bring up a really interesting point, and that's what we're allowed to hear, what we see, the perspective of what's been given to us through the channels that we have. Some of the most unlikely places that I've come across has been really great information has been through some podcasts, and not the ones I was thinking I was going to listen to get it. And so with that, I would just like to encourage you, our listener, to go ahead and send us, if you have anything like that or any information on that. We love getting that stuff. We listen to it, we read it, we respond. It's just part of what we do at Money on Tap to connect with you, our listeners. And it's one of the things that, we don't throw out there all that often, but we love it. We just have some people that just send us stuff and love to help us, gather information as we're going through these different opportunities with you. You guys, I think that's all that we have time for. Was there anything else inside of this besides another 5 shows that we were just
the only thing I was going to say is for our listeners who heard about how we do sector investing and analysis on that, we rank sectors and invest. Call us, start a professional relationship with us, take advantage of some of this, because these sectors are ways to amplify your portfolio performance potentially over the long haul, and these are things that people aren't taking advice from. They're just buying the SPY, they're just buying this. Well, that's just what everyone did. Get out of that mindset. Get engaged. Get active. Become a person who knows what you're investing in, why, and take advantage of that. Give us a call.
Well done. You've been listening to Money on Tap, and this has been a lot of fun with you guys to do the American story inside of and ride along with us in the industrial sector. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Be successful in your investing, and we will see you here next week.
All season long, it's Money on Tap's Summer Sector Series. Each week exploring a different high-growth industry, analyzing major players, market trends, and emerging opportunities. Join us again next week for more smart, sizzling investment opportunities here at Money on Tap. The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through Osaic Wealth Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of Osaic Wealth Incorporated. Osaic Wealth Incorporated and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire, 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551.
Well, bye.